Hey guys, what's going on? Today we are going to be going over the Guardians of the Galaxy and their recent buff into the game, and honestly they're performing way better than they have in days past, and it was a much needed buff for them, and it kind of worked out as well with the limited changes to Thanos, nerfing him down a little bit and making that list a little less oppressive. There's some room for some new fun decks out there, and this Guardians deck is winning at over 60% for me right now, which is something incredible to say because usually the Guardians of the Galaxy, while they are fun cards, there's a lot of risk and reward to them usually that is not worth the payoff, so they are a lower win rate card. But I have been finding a lot of success with it, and it's just really fun to play something different. And before we get into the deck breakdown, for those of you who haven't seen the OTA that happened yesterday on the 21st of March, the key changes to the Guardians that we're going to go over, it impacts all of them except Nebula and Mantis, who has been looked at a little bit before. But Rocket has been changed to a 1/1, and his on reveal gives him +4 instead of +2, so he can be up to a 1/5, which is a very great stat line. Star-Lord is now the same 2/2 stat line, but gets +4, so now he's a 2/6 potentially. Groot is the back down to a 3/3 stat line, but he now gets +4, so he can get all the way up to a 3/7. Drax is a 4/5 stat line now, but he can get +4 and go all the way to a 4/9. And finally, Gamora went all the way up to a 5/8 with only a +4 power. So she still gets to that 5/12 stat line, but even if you miss with her, it feels not as bad because she has that 8 power. And honestly, all these buffs have made the Guardians much better than they were, but personally, I think Rocket, Star-Lord, and Drax have now significantly increased in their value, and I've found them being very successful in helping me win a lot of these games that I've been playing over the last day or two. And getting done with that quick overview of the Guardians change, let us dive into the Guardians controlled list here, get into the key cards for you guys that you need to have in this list to really succeed, and really the tons of flex options you have to really make this deck into your own and have some fun winning some games. And you probably are going to steal some cubes with this list. And the reason I am going with the Guardians control name state for this list is because you were really playing the list to control where your opponent is playing and predicting where they're going to go. And a lot of the changes to the Guardians cards now makes it more valuable to make your opponent think about where they're going. And you're just going to find increased value to allow for you to have priority into the later game that leads for the potential of having two options in terms of winning a game with Alioth or Doctor Doom or whatever large card you're playing as your turn 6 play. And my first must-have in this list has got to be Nebula. She is a staple in a lot of controlling type lists, and now she obviously worked well with the Guardians before, but now with the buff to all the on-reveal Guardians, she really is a must-have and really makes your opponent think about things, because while they could be playing cards into the Nebula lane, they know you're probably playing these Guardians that are gonna get exponential power just by playing them into the same lane and counteracting their play to keep the Nebula from buffing up. And as I was saying earlier, Nebula fits into the archetype in terms of making your opponent do what you want them to do in the concept of what control means, and she works extremely well at you predicting what your opponent is going to do and where they need to play. And along with her, she is the key card lined up with Storm as well. And I have Storm as a must-have because she is the secondary card in this list that you have that helps control and let you predict where your opponent's going to play. She really does a good job at, even if she's not out on turn 3, you can still get her out on turn 4. Turn 5 really doesn't matter at that point, but she's going to be able to impact how your opponent's going to play, and you have a lot of cards in this list, specifically the Guardians, that are going to benefit from you locking down a location. And if your draw doesn't end up being the best in terms of having Guardians for your Nebula and Storm lanes, we're running the Miss Marvel package as well. She's going to always sit well in the middle lane. Obviously, if you're going against a Loki list with Rogue, you're in big trouble, but you know a lot of times you're not going to be playing against that list. You can confidently play your Miss Marvel down, and even if you haven't had the ability to put anything into your Storm lane, there's a chance that you're going to draw your Doctor Doom later, or you already have him in your hand, and you're going to have Storm and a Doombot into that lane, and you're going to get the additional +5 from Miss Marvel, and a lot of the times your opponent's still not going to be able to compete with that, so it's just a very strong controlling aspect to have your Storm in, whether it is going to be your Guardians getting played into her lane or your Doombot's Miss Marvel plan. And I have Zabu in this list as a must-have simply because of the fact that we are running the Miss Marvel package, and personally I think Drax has benefited extremely well from this change to the Guardians buff. Him getting to a 4/9 is an incredible stat line, so I like having his synergy in there with Zabu as well. And I also like to be running Shang-Chi in this list a lot, just to be having some way to counteract the potential power from a destroy list early that could come out. So there is a lot of value in you getting the cost reduction on your 4 drops from Zabu in this list, especially Miss Marvel Drax turn 6 plays and something pretty impressively strong that a lot of people are not going to be expecting. And we're getting a little lucky in my gameplay so far, but it seems like Mobius has taken a little bit of a step down in the meta, so he's not as prevalent in taking away from your Zabu value. But even if you do run into the Mobiuses out there, the devaluation of your cards going back up to a 4-drop is not like exponential in this list, so it doesn't kill you if you get Mobiused. And finally, in my must-haves, I'm going to go over all the on-reveal Guardians that I think are the best situationally and just overall the best in terms of the OTA change that should be in your list. And first off, Rocket being a potential 1/5 is incredible. Just being a 1-drop is very valuable in the aspect that you can hold on to him a lot and really play him strategically and really get that trigger of his on-reveal effect pretty much guaranteed every time, whether that be on a Nebula lane or on the Storm lane. For example, on turn 4, if you already stormed, you can Rocket and do a plethora of other plays into that lane, and you're going to get some good value out there, and your opponent is going to have a lot of trouble winning that lane, even with just a Storm, Rocket, and maybe a Zabu, because you could potentially miss Marvel or Doombot, and that is a lot of power in that lane from just a 1-drop and a underpowered 2 and 3 drops. And Star-Lord might be the biggest beneficiary from the buffs, because now he can get up to a 2/6, and there is a lot of versatility in being a 2-drop. So there's a lot of late game plays you can combo in with him, and he just works extremely well. Obviously, there's always the turn 1 Nebula. You can get lucky and turn 2 Star-Lord into the Nebula lane. A lot of the times that's going to hit, and you have huge momentum in that aspect. He works well comboed with on turn 3 Rocket and Star-Lord. He can pretty much fit in a lot of the times in many different turns. He's a very good card now in the Guardian based list. And the other Guardian that I think that may have benefited the most could be Drax. The potential of him being a 4/9 stat line is incredible. He works extremely well in this list because he could potentially be decreased in cost by your Zabu if you're playing that list. He's a great turn 4 play if you have a standalone Storm and then you play Drax. That is a ton of power that's going to be in that lane for only 2 cards, and he works extremely well in that aspect. I think he is going to be seeing a lot more gameplay than he has seen in the past, and he's a pretty decent card now. And finally, we have Gamora. She's probably long-standing been the most consistent on-reveal Guardian, and she finds her way into this list simply because she can get up to a 5/12 stat line, which is pretty incredible, and you have a lot of ways in this list to really know and navigate where your opponent's going to be, so you can consistently really get the value out of her card. And worst case you don't, she's a 5/8, which is not terrible now. and she won't be a Shang-Chi target, so you have that going for you. And with her being 5 energy, you can combo her as well with Rocket on turn 6 or any other 1 cost that you may have slotted into your list. And moving on to the flex, I really think this is where the Guardians base lists are going to really shine, because there is a lot of opportunities, like in terms of what you can do. There's no real specific type of list you have to play with them. They're going to be able to slot in a lot of lists as long as you have a few core cards to navigate where cards are going to be played. So there's going to be a lot of fun Guardian lists you're going to see out in the future, but these are going to be some of the best flex cards I had in mind when I was playing and testing with this more controlling style type archetype. And first off, I'll go into these flex cards that I have in like the very, very control style archetype, really locking down your opponent. And I have Daredevil in that list because it helps to just know where your opponents are going to play something on turn 5, and you can get some Guardian hits on it. And if you are also opting into the Professor X archetype into this flex option, he fits extremely well, obviously, with Daredevil. You can know where your opponent's playing and just lock down a lane and potentially straight up win it on turn 5. And also fitting into that more controlling archetype, Mobius is going to be in that because he is a good flex card at pretty much any time in the meta. He's fallen off a little bit in my list in the importance value, just because Thanos got nerfed a little bit with that big change to the Mind Stone now costing 2. And there's just a little bit less of the Thanos Mockingbird type lists out there right now, and Loki obviously is still prevalent, so he works well if you're running into a lot of Loki. So Mobius is still going to be a forever flex option in my opinion. And I have Jeff as a flex card because Jeff is a perennial contender for a flex card in pretty much any type of list out there. He gives you value and potentially messing up what your opponent's planning on where power is going to be when you move him on turn 6. He can get into your stormed lane if you need to. He can get into certain lanes that you are not even able to get into at all, potentially. He just has consistent value, so he's forever going to be a solid flex option. And if you are not really feeling the Zabu 4-cost heavy type list, you can easily slot Hope Summers into this list and kind of stack up. It's not as easy to trigger your Guardians with the Hope Summer aspect because it's you who wants to play cards there, not necessarily your opponent. But I think you could easily play Hope Summers in this list and be a little more greedy in the style of the list you're building out and get more high cost cards in there. And she's a very good card. She's going to work pretty well in a ton of the deck lists you're just going to throw her in. And Groot is the only on-reveal Guardian that I have fallen really down into the flex category. 3-3 is a fine stat line. Obviously, his on-reveal is incredible. A 3-7 is a crazy stat line. That's what the new Swordmaster buff is. But I just found I have a lot of stuff in that 3-cost value that I really would rather play a lot of the times over Groot, and you can be way more flexible with the 2 energy that Star-Lord costs, and he's gonna pretty much 2-6 is probably a lot more value than a 3-7, especially later in the game. Like, you could combo him with Miss Marvel on turn 6, you could combo him with Drax on turn 6. There's a lot of things you can do with Star-Lord that's a little bit better than Groot, so that's why I have Groot fallen more into your flex options rather than a must-have card in this list. And Iron Lad is a flex card, in my opinion, because there is a value, obviously, with him pairing up with Zabu, getting down to that 3-cost. So he could be one of your options of 4-cost cards that you want to get in there. There's a ton of good targets in this on-reveal list that you can get the value out, maybe even double with the Iron Lad coming out. Hit your Doctor Doom early. You could lock the lane down with Professor X, hit one of the Guardian on reveals. You just got to be a little more strategic where you're going to be playing your Iron Lad to make sure it's got good potential to line up and target your opponent's play on the same turn and get the potential Guardian buff. And Shang-Chi is another one of those cards that is a perennial contender in your flex positions in your deck. He's great at alleviating the power that your opponent is getting out potentially early in the game, even at on turn 6, if you're revealing last, you can surprise your opponent and get rid of cards that are not there. And he works well with Zabu in this list, so that is why I have him as a flex option. And I have Alioth in here as a flex card because the Guardians do an incredible job at giving you priority throughout the game, and especially towards the end of the game when you're going to have your Alioth play. So you're really going to have a lot of the times a consistent priority going into turn 6. So if you've laid out things accordingly and you have a good opportunity, you are going to have pretty strong Alioth plays in this list. So he's a very strong card, in my opinion, in the Guardian archetype right now. And finally, the last flex card I have, which is actually probably the card in the flex position that I would say is the closest to a must-have, is Dr. Doom in this list. He just has incredible value overall in terms of spreading your power horizontally. So if you haven't had the opportunity to get a good Alioth potentially on turn 6, Dr. Doom can work extremely well in that option. He works incredibly well with Miss Marvel. If you haven't had the opportunity to get a second card into one of your lanes, you know you're going to be able to get a 6 cost in there that you probably don't have a duplicate of, and you're going to get that Miss Marvel boost. It's extremely strong, and a lot of the times people still don't account for the potential of a Dr. Doom and having 15 power spread across the board, so he will steal you some cubes and win you a lot of games. So guys, that was a quick breakdown and overview of the Guardians and where they're going to kind of stand in the meta now, and kind of a quick deck that's pretty successful. Like I said, winning over at 60% right now, controlling things and making your opponent not really understand what's going on, and has plays they're just not going to be prepared for. And before we get into the gameplay portion of the video, I want to remind you guys, please like, comment, and subscribe. There's still over 95% of you guys that are watching this channel that are not subscribed. It would help me out a ton if you could just hit that button for me. Thanks. And first up, we have Renner. The White Hot Room is a location we're probably not going to win, so we're going to look to storm it on turn 3. Star-Lord and Jeff is good in our opening hand. Bifrost makes things a little more complicated for us. Probably just going to throw Jeff down into White Hot Room here. Could have risked it with Star-Lord there, but odds are unlikely he had something to play if he didn't have it on first turn. Monster's fine with Shang-Chi in hand. And I'm going to bet against him getting Hela and filling up location, so I'm going to storm left here so we clear out the left lane for our Doom and Jeff if we need to. And he's going to wave here. I don't want to do an early Dr. Doom here. And the play still might be Miss Marvel here. I think it's unlikely he has anything that's going to prevent the Bifrost from taking into effect. He's got Ronin. Interesting. And this is just a Shang-Chi Nebula turn. He's gonna Jubilee and fill up his middle lane with the Infinite. I should have moved Jeff so I could have had priority, but he bladed away the Infinite, but there's Sandman. So the play probably is just a Dr. Doom here. Yeah, his Doom's not going to be enough. And that is a easy victory there. Next up we have E.T. Blue, and Rocket is nice to have in the opening hand. You never really want to play him unless you get Pet Mansion on turn 1, and even then you still don't really want to play him. Big House is not terrible. We have Doom and Zabu to get us in there. I'm going to play assuming I'm going to draw something I want here. I really don't know what he's playing yet, so I don't want him to get free energy, so I'm just going to storm away that location. And he's gambiting, it's fine. That's unfortunate that he hit the Helicarrier, but I'd rather have him hit that earlier than later. We're just going to Drax here into the flooded location. And it does not matter to us. He takes the storm away, but we get the Drax value either way with the Spider-Man. Alright, this is a little bit tougher, but we're probably gonna Gamora into DC, and even if it doesn't hit, he's not gonna be in Shang-Chi range. And there's the MODOK. Swarm, Apocalypse, Proxima, Khazar, Lady Sif. So that's bad shape for us. But we do have priority with Goliath, so that is our win condition. And we hope he doesn't top deck Hela. And even so, he can't play her in the big house, so this should be a victory here for us. See what he wants to do. We Goliath away, and he double swarms mid, and that is a victory. Next up we have Frank the Tank. Don't like seeing Tarnax 4, but it's fine with Rocket, honestly. Interesting, he's throwing Rocket down onto Tarnax immediately there. Buff up our hand is nice. I'm just gonna play Jeff here to be safe. Works out. Let's see what he's working with. So he is playing just a Guardian Baseless as well. I do have an awkward hand, so I do want to play some stuff here. I don't really want to hold on to it. I'll play Rocket on Tarnax for Miss Marvel value. And we'll play Star-Lord right here. And unfortunately, he goes mid. Works out though, because he doesn't get any Groove value. This is just a Miss Marvel turn middle here. Sets up for a few plays next turn. And I think I'm probably gonna snap here because there's a good chance I can keep priority with Miss Marvel into Goliath. Frank is really thinking about what he's doing here. He's gonna Iron Lad. And he's gonna storm away the Daily Bugle, which honestly is fine for us. I'm gonna play our big Gamora there. I know he's going to Gamora as well, but that should be fine for us. And I'm going to move Jeff over into Tarmax to give us the priority just in case for the final turn. Alright. he's got to roll the dice in Tarnax if he wants to, so I'm going to throw Goliath mid here, and it should hopefully give us the victory. Yep. And sure, he does Jeff to tie it up, but that's not going to be enough. That is another victory. And next up, we have Camargo 996, and we have a pretty good opening hand here. It's unfortunate this location is Hellfire Club, but I am going to risk it and throw Nebula into the right lane here. And it doesn't really matter, he's playing a destroy deck, so this Nebula will not last anyways. We'll throw Zabu left here. And we gotta think what we're gonna do next turn. We really don't want to give him the opportunity to get Miss Marvel, so I may hold off on playing her. In terms of mana efficiency, it's a tough choice, but I do not want to give him a free Miss Marvel, so I'll just throw Jeff down. Hulk busters his Wolverine into a Nova. Now I do think I will play Miss Marvel this turn, because if he gets a large enough Venom or anything, I can Shang-Chi and Star-Lord next turn. And it's just gonna start getting a little more awkward for him with all his mana to play Miss Marvel too, if he wants to keep destroying. That gives us priority. I think we're gonna go with Gamora onto the Great Portal here. And we hit, and there's the Venom. He's giving us a pretty big sized Venom. Do Deadpools. So we have options here. The Shang-Chi Drax middle here might be the play. He's snapping. It's not letting me undo my turn, which is very interesting. That was a very confident snap for a very weak play. That was quite an easy victory for us there. Just assume there was no Shang-Chi out there, huh? Oh, that's another victory though. Next up we got CAC and Project Pegasus. Not ideal for us with this deck, honestly. Really not ideal with this hand either. I don't really want to waste Drax, so we'll just throw out Jeff and Nebula. And he's probably playing a Destroy. Ooh, a Storm list. Storm, Nebula, Jeff. So his hand, he's probably playing the same type of list I am, and his hand was much better than mine. I can't throw a rocket there to try to fight it. Yeah, he's got nothing. We've probably already lost that location. So we can leave it to the roll. I'm gonna throw Storm here, and it's just gonna become who has a luckier Tarmax. Sure, Rocket, that's fine. He's gonna be behind and not have enough power though. Captain Marvel, sure, that's not enough. Alright. We're gonna go ahead and Gamora here. Oh, Goliath is a great draw. We're snapping to that. It's the Star-Lord, but that does not matter. Oh, okay. That is what you call bad. This is now a absolute crapshoot to win the game here. But we do have Doctor Doom, so that's nice. We do know we're going to get 2 5-power pluses. So I think it's better to get the consistent 5-power into these 2 locations, potentially get a big 6 drops on our right lane here to compete with the Nebula. And I'm willing to go snap for him here and see what happens. This is a type of game you see very often. And he Goliath, which doesn't do anything for him. I'm not really sure why that Captain Marvel moved. I guess it won him the position, but it didn't win him the game. But either way, we got a lot luckier with him, and that's another victory though. Finally we have Zaylar. White Palace, let's see what he's got. Arnim Zola is actually extremely nice to know about, especially if we're trying to win with a storm. And we do like having Zabu in our opening game. Sunspot. Sure. Zabu here. Got that value going. And we are going to storm middle here. I give him as little potential value for his Arnim Zola as he can get. Mobius is not the end of the world. We're only getting value for it on our Drax, Marvel, and Shang, so we'll be fine. Drax middle here. His buff is extremely good now. It's pretty easy to line a target up for when you're going to play him. What a move there by Zaylar. All that to still lose the location. This is when it gets a little tricky for us, but honestly, if we can hit Gamora here and Arnim Zola, the Gamora, it's unfortunate, but are okay with that. Now it becomes a odds game. What are the odds that he's playing anything that's going to beat us? He only gets 4 power from a blue Marvel, which isn't enough. So I'm gonna Goliath here on DC and see what happens. Yeah, and he's out of there. So guys, that was some gameplay, infinite high-level gameplay of this Guardians deck, and it was working extremely well. Like I said, it's winning at over 60%, which is a crazy stat line for Guardians lists that were terrible before, honestly. So if you like this and you want more content, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.